Hello YouTube, so today we'll be looking at the 8th episode of Night Visions. So for the first story, it's Bitter Harvest, which is directed by a guy who did an episode of the 2000 series, The Invisible Man. Oh, and also Supernatural and Smallville and Xena and Hercules, but who cares about that? The Invisible Man! I like seeing the obscure things that I've watched actually show up in a way that I can discuss it. Seriously though, Supernatural, Smallville, and The X-Files are things that a lot of the people involved with this show have been in. That's why I'm not really bringing them up all that much, is because, well, pretty much everyone in this show has some relation to it. It's kind of odd, actually. So the first story is about Shane, a kid on a farm who does a lot of farm things, and yeah, that means southern accents, which I will not be continuing to use because I'm born and raised in Georgia, and amazingly, hearing this southern accent my whole life gets a little bit grating. You'd think I'd be better at doing a southern accent because of that, but no. So, yeah, anyway, Shane is played by a guy who was in a lot of slasher sequels and on Bates Motel. I felt the need to mention that because I like Bates Motel. So he's talking with his friends one day, and they mention how his neighbor, Jake Jennings... Yes, he's really Old Man Jennings. So they mention an urban legend about him potentially having been a murderer and being the son of a witch. For some odd reason, I guess he was never arrested for those murders, kind of making him innocent from the get-go. Either that or they just decided that he was reformed enough after all his killings. And they decided he can go free. He's an old guy. So Shane says that he's not scared of Old Man Jennings, and his friends dare him to go over to his place. And I hope that you enjoyed his friends there, because that's their big point in this story, mentioning an urban legend and starting a chain of events. That's really all they do here. They never show up again. You'd think that Shane would confide in them at some point, but no, they do not matter after this point, as they are never seen or heard from again. My theory is that Old Man Jennings just sort of got revenge on the one who was fishing on his property, and so the other one was just busy grieving him, and no one notified Shane because they're a-holes. I don't know. That's just my theory, because seriously, they're never in this ever again. And so Shane decides that, yeah, no, that's actually a really good idea. So he decides to go trespass on his neighbor's property. Yeah, it really is a great idea. And he goes over there to see a pile of manure. Ooh, suspicious. You would think that his friend, who also hangs out at this farm a lot, I would assume, would know what a pile of manure looks like in comparison to a grave, but no, I guess not. So anyway, Old Man Jennings spots Shane, so he chases him down instead of just letting, his neighbor's son actually say what he was doing over there. Like, for all he knows, they could have just gotten their mail switched up, but no, this obviously requires a dramatic chase scene. So yeah, anyway, eventually they make it to a grinder where Shane just hides in a shed. However, Old Man Jennings somehow very conveniently falls into the grinder, and it magically turns itself on somehow, and he loses both of his arms in the process. Shane never decided to just turn this off for some reason, a-hole. So yeah, if you had any sympathy for Shane, remember, he never decided to help out the old man who was losing his arms. So yeah, he's a really nice guy. So a little bit later at dinner, Shane's really sad about what happened. Of course, Ignor's not sorry enough to go visit him, which he could just said to his parents, hey, yeah, I'm worried about our neighbor, so they could just gone there and apologize for what he did, or maybe even confess that it was an accident. No, he actually hasn't said anything about this event to anybody, and it's just being a little prick and not telling anyone because he's a good main character. So yeah, anyway, he's not really hungry after his parents discuss the guy who lost both of his arms on their property over dinner. Who talks about this over dinner? I mean, I talk about stuff that involves gore a lot during dinner, but a farm family, it just doesn't really seem like kind of the topic of conversation for dinner. Maybe after dinner while you're washing the dishes, but not during dinner when you're eating. Amazingly, maybe a guy losing his arms could maybe make someone lose their appetite. I'm just saying. But yeah, anyway, Old Man Jennings eventually gets back, and yeah, he's got no arm. Waiting for his prosthetics, he needs someone to help him take care of everyday things, as well as work on his farm. So Shane's dad volunteers Shane because, well, Old Man Jennings told him that he was fishing on his property. You would think that Old Man Jennings would really want revenge for this, but no, he's a patient sort, I guess. So anyway, Old Man Jennings is ready to enact his ultimate revenge plan. Making Shane do chores. The monster! Oh, and also, like, tampering with them with magic and stuff, whatever. But yeah, mostly the chores, which involves an axe. So I do respect him at the very least for seeing an axe as a superior weapon that it totally is. Seriously, this is a great weapon, yet so many killers in horror movies don't use it. I don't know why. It's a really good weapon. So I, at the very least, respect Old Man Jennings for giving the axe the respect it deserves. Love you, axe. So yeah, anyway, eventually Old Man Jennings gets his major revenge when he makes Shane feed him. Yep. This is really working. And then after that, he gives him back this riding saddle thing for his horse. Woo. But then it turns out that his horse, Ginger, is finally gonna have its colt. Aw, this is a really sweet story. However, it's born with no limbs. So, yeah, that's kind of disturbing. Oh, and then at the end of the story, we also get the nice little notification that apparently Shane's mom is also pregnant. And the host confirms that, yes, this kid will be born with no limbs, or at the very least, no arms. Wow, that's incredibly dark. I love it. So, yeah, the first story is honestly kind of boring throughout most of it. Shane, while kind of an a-hole at the beginning, mostly for letting some old man's arms get chopped up in a grinder while never, turning the grinder off or anything. For the course of the story, we do sort of see guilt consume him, so at the very least we do see him feeling bad about his actions, and he does at the very least try and make up for it up to the point of where his life is put in danger, so he's not a hateable character, but yeah, but it does take a while for him to actually become likable. His father, though, is kind of strict, but still you can tell that he does care about his kid and just wants to give him a little bit of discipline. So he's not a horrible person, but still, I mean, if you see your kid coming back with with an extremely pale expression, running away from your neighbor's property, maybe question that a little. His mother is hardly in this story. However, she does actually have a bit behind her name, as she has been in things like the Phantom Thread, so yeah, I don't really know what role she had in the Phantom Thread, but she was in it, so yeah, she's got a bit more of a career than some of the other actors on this. Then there's Shane's friends. They exist. Like I said, they only show up for the opening. It's just there to get some exposition out of the way and to start off the chain of events. Nothing else really happens with them. Then there's Old Man Jake Jennings, who's played by Jack Pleasance, who was kind of a big name, apparently. I can't say that I've really seen much of his work, but having looked at his filmography and also checking the comments of this episode, I can definitely see that a lot of other people have, so yeah, I just thought I'd bring that up. He does a pretty good job in this role, and while I would have liked it if he used his magic more throughout as a way of compensating for the loss of his arms in order to be more menacing, so then it would feel like, yeah, there's really nothing that you can do to stop this guy. His final action really does make it all worth it, because seriously, this is a very dark ending, and while yes, it is pretty predictable that he's ultimately gonna get the last laugh, it's the way he goes about it that really makes this story work. seriously, I was pretty bored with this story until the very end, because that is where it is really haunting. I mean, at first I didn't even see it, the colt had no legs, until they actually said it. Like, it takes a bit, mostly due to lighting, which yes, is a major problem with the ending here, as I feel like it should be a bit more well lit for when we have the major colt reveal, but no, it's actually kind of hard to tell if the colt has no legs or not until the very moment that they actually say it. That's when it was really haunting to me, and I also felt very bad for that colt. But also the fact that it'll happen again on a child, a human child, and probably for the rest of Shane's life. So, like, if he ever has a kid, it'll probably happen this way. It is super haunting, and I really love how dark this ending got. It definitely compensates for the very lame revenge schemes at the beginning, of which the most menacing was when Old Man Jenkins gets Shane to put his hands in the grinder to pull something out, and then very, very slowly moves over to the button to turn it on. Dude, you want your revenge, just press it! You don't need to meander around to this! Just turn it on! But yeah, no, apparently that was a dumb idea, of course, I should have known. But the ending of this story really does make the whole thing work, and is very impactful. So, while it does take a while for anything to actually happen, the main character is fairly likable, as well as Old Man Jennings, although apparently I guess he was actually the son of a witch, so was he also a murderer? In which case, I really do wonder, why was he let out of jail? Seriously, why? Were they just like, oh, well, he's too old to try this again or something, so it's fine? I really don't get that. And a very strong ending that I really do think made this whole story worth it. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for the first one. So now let's get into the second story, My So-Called Life and Death. So yeah, the twist for this story is kind of in the name there, but don't worry, we'll get to it. So this one is about Julia, who, by the way, was played by an actress who was in a lot of family sitcoms, like Party of Five and Full House. I just felt the need to mention that. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting that she went on to a horror story. I've never really seen Party of Five or Full House, but I do think that would be kind of interesting watching this episode, having had seen those and seeing her in such a very different role than those sort of things. I don't know, it might be a little bit jarring. It was kind of weird to me seeing someone like Dylan Sprouse in Dismissed playing a psychopath, so I would be kind of interested if you actually did grow up watching those shows and watching this episode years later, and I would kind of like to know how you would feel about that, because it's a very big change in type of roles. But yeah, anyway, so Julia is an angsty teenager who mostly makes audio recordings to herself instead of writing a diary, because I guess that takes too long. Wow, so fascinating. She lives in a kind of dysfunctional family where the mother is pretty much the head of it, while the father pretty much just sort of backs down and just agrees with everything that she says, and the mother compliments her son Brian at every turn, even when he tries to burn things constantly. You'd think that she would reprimand him for that in order to try and, get him to stop burning things, which could ultimately end in a fire, but no, she decides it's okay, and this is just a phase, he'll get out of it. So she hugs him and stuff because of it, after reprimanding him for like a second. Because that's how parenting should be. Seriously, okay, I am not a parent, but discipline is a needed thing. I mean, obviously not at every turn, but when your kid is trying to burn things, reprimand him or else he's gonna keep on doing it. He needs to learn that it's a bad thing, because other than that, he's just watching fire and thinks that it's okay, in which it can end in your house burning down or people dying. Oh, and also he's throwing rocks at birds, so yeah, these aren't signs of a psychopath at all, so yeah, whatever. Anyway, though, the only joy that Julia gets out of her life is watching a handyman around her house doing stuff. truly the most fascinating thing. And she likes doing that because she thinks that he's hot. So she constantly tells her audio recording about it. So when she actually goes and tries to interact with him, he walks right through her. So she obviously thinks that he's a ghost. I mean, obvious conclusion there. Guy walks through you, ghost! I mean, I would kind of think, like, I don't know, maybe I'm hallucinating or something first, but no, ghost. Obvious solution there. Obviously what's true there. So, yeah, anyway, Julia goes and tells her family, who immediately disbelieve her and thinks that she's just lying. So, Julia tries to interact with him again, and he actually does see her, but runs away horrified. Seriously, if you don't see where this is going, then I don't know. I mean, seriously, it's in the title. So yeah, Julia tries to tell her family about it again and how she wants to help them and stuff, and they completely disagree, so much so they lock her up in her room. But she eventually gets out and locks her brother Brian in a closet. Honestly, that felt way better than it should have. And then she gets into the car with the handyman, ultimately scaring him enough that he starts to swerve off the road and gets into a crash. Oh no, this is a... Man, if this show has taught me anything, no one had seen that crash other than Julia. So, I mean, if he died, he could still live. He's got to hide the body immediately and get the car insurance. Seriously, I still don't get how that works. Anyway, so the handyman ultimately says for them to just leave him alone, as all he was trying to do was fix up the house. This makes Julia come to a big realization when she gets home and the whole house is actually burnt down. And when she goes to see her family, she's eating dinner, which honestly looks really neat because they were looking totally normal in this incredibly charred and burnt environment. I really did like that shot, but yeah, so she comes back completely scarred from a fire. So yeah, that's why I said the thing about burning the house down, because Brian, the little moron, burnt the house down. This is what I'm saying. Give your kids some discipline on certain things. I understand, you know, being nice to them, especially when they're kids, but come on, this kid was playing with fire. They died because these parents were incredibly irresponsible and were just downright dumb. So yeah, I'm sorry. I really don't feel bad about the parents dying here, or Brian, who continues to think that no, I'm totally innocent in this scenario. You're the one who burnt down the house, you little moron. God, I didn't like Brian. Julia's ready to just come to terms with what happened. However, the rest of her family doesn't want that because then that'll be ruining the reality that they've been trying to keep. So eventually they convince Julia to do the same in like a minute. Yeah, that's seriously how long it takes for her to decide, yeah, no, I'm cool with living my life as a ghost again. Don't know why. And they continue to live their afterlives, never moving on, and just stuck in a continuous loop, of which Julia hates this place, so it totally makes sense why she would decide to stay, because her family that she doesn't really like told her to. I don't know. The story is pretty decent, honestly. I actually did kind of like the build-up to it, despite it being predictable, even the twist being revealed in the title. Seriously, if you don't expect Julia to be dead at the end of this, I don't really know why. It's called My So-Called Life and Death. I mean, seriously, what else do you think is going to happen here? But yeah, anyway, and the build-up to the reveal is actually pretty good. I did like seeing some subtle things, like them getting angry at Julia thinking about suicide, because, well, yeah, that would kind of be ruining their little perfect world there if she tries to kill herself and nothing really works. There's also an aspect of an extremely dysfunctional family in this story that eventually led to their own deaths, and I do really like that aspect of it. It's pretty interesting to see how this family works, with the mother being the one mostly in charge, her having an absolute love of her son and an unknown disdain for her daughter, and her father just sort of being subservient to her. It's actually kind of interesting to see a family dynamic explored like this. I also find it kind of funny because, well, the actress who played Julia was in a lot of family sitcoms, so it's kind of like a very dysfunctional twist on those, and I do really like how that's handled. So And so it does actually make knowing a little bit about the actors in this kind of make it a little bit more fun. And that said, though, the twist for this one is very predictable. It's a perfectly fine twist, but not very subtle. It's just, oh my god, they were dead the whole time. Sixth Sense. Ooh. So yeah, I mean, it's just sort of Sixth Sense, honestly, at the end. And that film was far more subtle about its approach, while here it's just like, well, one of them's a ghost. Take your pick as to which one, and yeah, it's pretty obvious which one it is, though. However, I do feel bad for this handyman. I mean, he's just sort of, he just sort of bought this house, you know, he wants to refurnish it and stuff. He wants to repair this old house where horrible things happen, yet all that he keeps on getting is a bunch of ghosts interrupting it. I feel really bad for the guy. This story is pretty decent. The characters are fairly interesting, as is the execution of the story, mostly focusing on the dynamic between the family, which I honestly found pretty interesting. That said, though, it really suffers when it comes to the twist, because it's extremely predictable, and that just sort of took me out of it. I mean, I wouldn't mind rewatching it or anything, as it is still a pretty decently executed story for the most part, but the ending does kind of ruin it a bit. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for this one. Bye.